My husband is celebrating his new promotion while I'm scrubbing the floor his mistress spilled wine on. You missed a spot, she said 4 months later. She regretted every word. My name is Michigan. I'm 42, a mom of 2 teenagers, and, until recently, wife to a man who treated me like wallpaper, part of the house, part of the image, but never something he actually saw. Bryson and I had been together for 17 years. Married for 15. We built a life in Seattle, raised our kids in a big old craftsman home in Queen Anne. Picture perfect on the outside, neatly trimmed hedges, family photos and matching Christmas pajamas, brunch with friends every other Sunday. If you had asked anyone who knew us, they'd say we were solid. A model couple. He was charismatic, well-dressed, always in control. People loved him. Especially women. But when you live behind the scenes, you see the parts others don't. He had a way of making things feel like your fault. The missed dinner dates. The cold shoulder in bed. The way he always took his phone into the bathroom and left it face down on the nightstand. I blamed myself at first. Thought maybe I was too tired, too distracted by raising the kids, too wrapped up in grieving my mom who passed away last year. You start justifying things. Minimizing them. He stressed. It's just a phase. He still loves me. Until the night I saw it with my own eyes. Bryson had just landed a promotion, VP at his firm. They threw a private party in one of those expensive Airbnb rentals near Lake Union. A place with floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and white everything. The kind of place where people pretend to be wealthier than they really are. I came late. Our daughter, Mira, had a migraine, and I wanted to make sure she was settled before leaving. When I walked into that house, I knew immediately I was walking into a world I no longer belonged to. Everyone there was younger, louder, glossier. New hires and fresh faces I didn't recognize. The kind of crowd that didn't remember the years I'd spent hosting dinners, proofreading presentations, and smoothing out Bryson's suits the night before big meetings. And then there was her. I had never seen her before that night, but I knew who she was the second I laid eyes on her. Her name was Sloane. Of course it was. She was perched beside my husband on a bar stool, laughing a little too loud, sipping wine a little too slowly. Her hand casually grazed his shoulder when she leaned in to whisper something. He smiled, that smile. The one I used to get. I felt like I'd been slapped. But I smiled. I always smiled. I poured myself a drink, mingled with strangers, and waited for the ground to stop tilting. By the time most of the guests had left, I was in the kitchen helping clean up. Old habits die hard. Bryson was on the patio, laughing with Sloane. I could see them through the glass doors, close, comfortable, like they were the only two people in the world. Sloane eventually came inside, wine in hand. She walked across the kitchen like she owned the place, stiletto heels clicking against marble. She stopped near me, gave a lazy smile, and then, without breaking eye contact, accidentally knocked her glass over. The wine poured down the counter, dripping onto the cream rug below. She didn't flinch. "Oh," she said, looking down at the mess. "Oops." I dropped to my knees and started blotting it out of instinct. And that's when she said it. "You missed a spot." Then she took another sip and turned away. I heard Bryson laugh from behind me, like it was all one big joke. That was the moment. The moment I knew I wasn't in denial anymore. I wasn't going to shrink myself to fit in his life. I wasn't going to be the woman who cleaned up messes she didn't make. I went home early that night. He stayed. Of course he did. The next morning, I didn't say a word. Just looked at him while he made coffee and asked if I wanted any. Like everything was normal. But something in me had snapped. Quietly. Finally. So I started documenting everything. I found a lawyer. Quietly. Carefully. I opened a separate bank account and moved over my share of the joint savings. I pulled credit reports. Made copies of deeds and retirement documents. I stopped being a wife and started being a survivor. Because I knew it wasn't just betrayal. It was disrespect. Repeated and loud. And I wouldn't let it be my legacy. Then I hired a private investigator. Her name was Tanya, former detective, now specialized in infidelity cases. She didn't flinch when I gave her the rundown. Just nodded and said, "Let me handle it." She did. Hotel receipts. Plane tickets. Photos. Conversations. She handed me the truth in a neatly labeled folder. 8 months. That's how long he'd been seeing Sloane. Trips to Napa. Secret weekends when he told me he was at executive retreats. The worst part? She wasn't even trying to hide. They were reckless, like they thought I'd never find out, or wouldn't do anything if I did. But I was done being predictable. So I smiled. Played the role. Let him think he was getting away with it while I gathered every ounce of leverage I needed. When he left for another conference in Scottsdale, one I now knew he was attending with her, I made my move. The night Bryson's flight took off, I didn't cry. I didn't pour wine or call a friend or sit in my robe watching reruns like the version of me from a few months before would've. I put my plan into motion with the same calm he must have used when lying to me all those nights. I had 48 hours. That's how long he'd be gone. And I knew his patterns well enough to be sure he wouldn't check in unless he needed something. The kids were with my sister for the weekend, they thought I was going on a spa retreat. I didn't correct them. I started with the locks. I had a locksmith come out early the next morning. Changed every single one, front, back, garage. I even changed the alarm code and removed his access entirely. Seattle's full of contractors who don't ask questions, especially when you tip in cash. Then I called the movers. I'd booked them weeks in advance under my maiden name. Told them exactly what I wanted packed, only my things. I left him the big screen TV, his rare bourbon collection, and the Peloton he hadn't touched since lockdown ended. But I took what mattered, the heirlooms from my mother, the books he never touched but I reread every winter, the antique desk I bought with my first paycheck from the floral shop I gave up to support his dreams. I made sure to take every last photo of our wedding and left the frames face down on the shelves. By sundown, I was out of that house. I moved into a rental in Ballard, small, but cozy. Close to the marina. Smelled like sea air and second chances. I'd signed a 6-month lease under my name only. No trace of Bryson anywhere. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I emailed my attorney. We filed the divorce paperwork immediately, citing infidelity and requesting primary custody. Washington's a community property state, but since I had all the documentation of Bryson's cheating, and Tanya's photos spelled everything out clearly, my lawyer was confident we could negotiate terms in my favor. But the cherry on top? We served him the divorce papers through his workplace. My lawyer arranged for a courier to deliver the envelope right to his firm's receptionist. Mid-morning. Full office. I won't lie, petty or not, I smiled knowing that the promotion party boy had just become the cautionary tale in the break room. Within hours, I got the first call from him. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. Long ones. Angry ones. Pathetic ones. Michigan, what are you doing? We need to talk. You're being dramatic. This isn't the right way to handle it. I read them all. Didn't reply to a single one. Then came the email. He didn't know what I'd found out yet. Thought maybe I was just having a midlife breakdown. But he quickly realized I had receipts, literal and figurative. He begged for a conversation. Said we owed it to the kids. Told me Sloane meant nothing serious. Just a distraction. Just a mistake. I'd spent 15 years thinking I wasn't enough. Turns out, I was just too much for a man who preferred easy. I agreed to meet, at a coffee shop, public place, neutral territory. Not for him. For me. I wanted to see his face when I said it out loud. He arrived looking like a man used to winning. Button down crisp, Rolex glinting, phone in hand. He started with pleasantries, like we were catching up. I cut him off. Don't waste time, Bryson. We both know what you did. He paused. Like he wanted to deny it. But he saw it in my face. I wasn't there to fight. I was past anger. Past grief. I was closure. He tried the sympathy card. I've just been under a lot of pressure, Michigan. This year's been rough. So I slid the manila folder across the table. The one Tanya had given me. Photos. Messages. Hotel receipts. A timeline of betrayal. He didn't speak for a full minute. Just stared. I leaned back and said, I'll be keeping the house. The kids stay with me. And you'll cover tuition for both. Or I take this folder to your firm. He didn't argue. He just nodded. The moment he realized he lost control, he looked smaller. Like someone had let the air out of him. For once, he didn't have the upper hand. But the fallout wasn't just his. Because remember Sloane? The wine spiller? She wasn't exactly innocent in all of this either, and karma was just getting started. Turns out, Sloane worked in PR. She'd recently landed a high-profile client, an international beauty brand known for its squeaky clean image. I did some digging, Tanya helped again, and found out the contract had a morality clause: no public scandals, no bad press, especially nothing involving workplace relationships or infidelity. All it took was a single anonymous email. Screenshots included. And one photo of her and Bryson kissing on a retreat he billed to his company's expense account. She was fired within the week. She didn't know it was me, not right away. But I have no doubt she figured it out eventually. Especially the day I ran into her at a cafe in Capitol Hill. That story is one I'll save for a little later. Let me know if you're still following. I'm not done yet. This rabbit hole goes deeper. And trust me, she wasn't the only one who ended up regretting that spilled wine. Still here? Good, because it's about to get even messy, eh? So, let's rewind to that cafe in Capitol Hill. It had been a few weeks since the legal paperwork was filed. Sloane had been fired. Bryson's firm had started whispering about ethical concerns tied to his expense reports. Word spreads fast when you're high up the ladder and suddenly there's smoke. My lawyer said it wasn't looking good for him keeping that shiny new VP title. The firm wasn't keen on scandal. And let's be real, he was only ever one misstep away from falling out of favor. Anyway, I was at a little coffee shop I loved, one I hadn't been to in ages. The kind of place where people bring their laptops but actually talk to each other. I was reading a book when I felt someone staring. You know the feeling, eyes burning into the side of your face. I looked up. There she was. Sloane. No designer heels. No flawless hair. Just dark roots showing, a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, and an empty espresso cup in front of her like she'd been sitting there a while. I almost didn't recognize her. That confident, wine-glass clinking woman from the party was gone. We locked eyes. She froze. I didn't. I walked right past her to grab my coffee and turned just before leaving. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. But I did say, quietly, just loud enough, you missed a spot. Then I left. No scene. No drama. Just those 4 words. And let me tell you, nothing felt more satisfying than watching her face collapse in real time. Like all the regret and shame she had tried to suppress just cracked through. Now, Bryson? He didn't go down quietly. Of course not. Men like him rarely do. He tried damage control. Said he and Sloane had cut ties and that he was going to work on himself. Even posted some vague quote about growth through pain on his LinkedIn, which honestly made me laugh out loud. The same man who couldn't handle me setting boundaries now thought he was a philosopher. He started showing up to the kids' soccer games again. Always trying to chat. Always too cheerful. The kids tolerated it, but they weren't stupid. They knew things had changed. I never poisoned them against him. I never had to. His actions spoke loud enough. Our daughter Mira, who used to idolize him, now only refers to him as Bryson when she's mad. She's 15. That name drop alone is a dagger to the heart, and she knows it. Our son, Theo, is quieter about it. 11 years old but old enough to start seeing the world in shades instead of black and white. He asks a lot of questions. Wants to know why dads lie. Why moms cry. Why people say forever when they don't mean it. I try to answer the best I can, but some questions don't have good answers. Bryson tried to win them back with gifts, new phones, surprise dinners, even offering to take Theo to a Seahawks game. They didn't bite. Kids are smarter than adults give them credit for. And in the background, the legal stuff churned on. We had our first mediation meeting not long after. He showed up with a new lawyer, one of those slick types with a pocket square and fake empathy. Tried to argue that I was being unfair in the asset division. Unfair. That was rich. He wanted to sell the house. Said it wasn't financially feasible for me to keep it. My lawyer, bless her, calmly reminded him that I had documentation of misconduct, and that we could go to trial if he really wanted to play that game. He backed off. Fast. We settled most of it in that room. He gave up his share of the house, agreed to pay child support, and kept some investment accounts I didn't care about anyway. I didn't want to ruin him. I wanted him to live in the world he made, without me cleaning up behind him. Meanwhile, Sloane disappeared from the social circuit. I didn't hear much for a while until a mutual acquaintance from Bryson's firm mentioned she'd moved back in with her sister, until things settle. Word is, she tried reaching out to him after her job tanked, but he ghosted her. Shocking, I know. People like Bryson always need a fresh audience. Once the thrill wears off and reality sets in, they go looking for someone else to applaud their story. Sloane stopped clapping, so she became a liability. I could almost feel sorry for her if I didn't remember the way she looked down at me like I was the dirt under her heels. Almost. At home, things were quiet. Not lonely. Just quieter. Like I'd turned the volume down on chaos. I started cooking for myself again. Not the quick pasta and jarred sauce dinners I used to make to survive the week, but real cooking. From scratch. I started walking along the water every morning. Reconnecting with people I had lost track of over the years. Turns out when you stop sacrificing every part of yourself for someone else's comfort, you realize how much of you still exists. People started asking me if I was okay. I told them I was. But the truth? I was more than okay. I was rebuilding. Not from rubble, but from reality. Finally. I'll share what happened when the divorce finalized soon. And how Bryson reacted when the last piece of control he thought he had slipped through his fingers. Glad you're still with me, because the most complicated part came after the dust started to settle. Once the legal stuff was nearly wrapped up, the part nobody talks about hit me hardest. The silence. You spend months running on adrenaline, lawyers, documents, court dates, emails at 2 a.m., and then suddenly, there's a stillness you don't know how to sit with. You're not fighting anymore, but you're not healed either. It's like standing in the middle of a burned-down house, holding a broom, unsure if you should clean or just walk away. That's where I was. The kids were adjusting. Mira was spending more time in her room, blasting music that sounded like heartbreak and eyeliner, and Theo had started carrying his sketchbook everywhere. I gave them space. I didn't push. I kept showing up in little ways, hot meals, quiet car rides, letting the TV play past bedtime if it made them laugh. Bryson, meanwhile, was unraveling. At first, he tried to rebrand himself. Posting photos with the kids, old ones, from vacations I had planned. Making cryptic posts about life changes and realigning priorities. He even tagged me in one, as if we were on friendly terms. I ignored it. Then came the real panic. About 3 weeks after our mediation meeting, I got an email from his lawyer asking to revisit the custody agreement. Apparently, Bryson was unhappy with only having them every other weekend. Said he missed meaningful parenting time. This, from a man who once left Myra's birthday dinner early to take a call from a client about patio pavers. We agreed to a meeting with a family counselor. Neutral ground. The kids didn't come, just the two of us and the counselor, a kind-eyed woman named Belinda who probably saw through both of us 5 minutes in. Bryson showed up in a cardigan. I'm not kidding. A full-on, Mr. Rogers-style cardigan. Like he was trying to rebrand himself as soft and sensible. He talked for 10 straight minutes about how fatherhood is central to his identity. How people change. How mistakes don't define a person. Belinda asked me what I thought. I didn't go off. I didn't explode. I just said, you can't show up after the damage and expect to be trusted with the repairs. I told her I wasn't blocking him from parenting. I just didn't want to force our kids to perform affection for a man who hadn't earned it. And that was the end of it. For now. After that session, he called me late one night. I stared at the screen for a long time. Thought maybe it was an emergency. I picked up. His voice was quiet. Slower than usual. Do you ever wonder if we could have fixed it? He asked. No, I said. I wonder why I stayed so long. Silence. Then he mumbled something about not knowing what he had until it was gone. I let him talk. Then I hung up. That was the last real conversation we had. What came next was more passive. Subtle jabs. Venmo requests for things he used to just pay for: school supplies, orthodontist visits, basketball shoes. I didn't engage. I just paid my half and moved on. Meanwhile, Sloane popped up again. Or, more specifically, her name did. A friend of mine, Megan, someone I'd grown closer with again after the split, ran into her at an industry mixer. Said she was trying to freelance, but no one wanted to touch her. Reputation, baggage, whatever you want to call it. Her name had become synonymous with scandal in a network that thrives on image. According to Megan, she spent most of the night drinking gin and pretending not to recognize anyone. I didn't feel bad for her. That surprised me. I thought I might, eventually. But the truth is, Sloane didn't break me. She just showed me how far I had already fallen. She was the final push. The last slap before I stood up and walked out of a life that was never really mine to begin with. There were still tough days. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I'd be folding laundry and a pair of his old socks would show up in the pile, and I'd freeze like I'd seen a ghost. Or I'd walk by a couple arguing in a grocery store parking lot and feel a pit in my stomach because it sounded like us, 5 years ago, before the pretending got so polished. But there were better days too. Little things. Theo asking to bake brownies with me on a Sunday afternoon. Mira walking into the kitchen and hugging me for no reason. Waking up to a quiet house and realizing I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore. One Saturday, I went out for coffee and ran into someone I hadn't seen in nearly a decade, Julian, an old coworker from the flower shop I used to manage before I stopped working full-time. He'd gone back to school, then opened a little greenhouse business up in Fremont. We talked for 20 minutes straight, laughing, catching up, swapping stories. Nothing romantic. Nothing heavy. Just easy. He invited me to visit the greenhouse sometime. Said he could use help with arranging a few display pieces. I said maybe. That night, I sat on my porch, sipping tea, and let myself imagine a future without Bryson in it. Not in a spiteful way. Just a peaceful one. That was new. And honestly, that's what this entire story has been about. Not revenge. Not even justice. Just finally choosing peace. And letting go of people who were never really holding on to you in the first place. I'll keep going if you want to hear the rest. There's still more: how the divorce finalized, what the kids said at the hearing, and the moment I found something like joy again. But that's enough for tonight. The divorce finalized on a rainy Wednesday in late November. The kind of Seattle rain that doesn't pour, it lingers, cold and constant, soaking into your coat and your bones. I remember watching the raindrops trail down the courthouse window while I signed the final document. The pen didn't even shake. Bryson was there. He looked tired. Older, somehow. The tan from Scottsdale had faded. His hair was grayer around the edges. But mostly, he looked like a man who had run out of distractions. I didn't say anything to him. Just handed the paperwork back to the clerk, nodded at my lawyer, and walked out without looking back. I didn't cry. No part of me mourned it anymore. The marriage, the lies, the version of myself that bent until I didn't recognize her, gone. What was left was someone sharper. Quieter. Stronger. We didn't speak for a while after that. He still saw the kids every other weekend. I didn't interfere. Let them make their own judgments. They came home with stories sometimes, how he'd cook frozen lasagna, forget to buy shampoo, show up late to Theo's art show but bring a huge balloon bouquet like it made up for it. They were seeing it. Slowly. I didn't need to point it out. The real ending began a few months later. It started with a letter. A formal envelope from Bryson's firm. It wasn't meant for me, but Theo accidentally pulled it out of his dad's mail pile when he brought over his backpack one weekend. He handed it to me on a Sunday night with a casual, "This came for Dad." Curious, I opened it. Inside was a notice: Bryson had been officially demoted. The wording was clinical, reassigned to non-executive responsibilities pending further internal review. Translation? His golden boy image had cracked. The firm couldn't publicly oust him without a lawsuit, but they were phasing him out. No more leadership. No more big clients. No more perks. Why? Because of a quiet HR investigation. Turns out, several expense reports flagged after the Sloan fallout uncovered years of misuse. Not just hotel rooms and dinners. Personal purchases. Airfare he billed as conferences. Enough to raise suspicion. And Sloan? She didn't stay quiet. I found out from Megan, again, bless her for keeping me in the loop, that after being ghosted and fired, Sloan had her own little revenge arc. She sent a detailed complaint to Bryson's firm, complete with receipts. Screenshots. Voice notes. The works. Apparently, being used and discarded didn't sit well with her. Now here's where it gets satisfying. A few weeks after that letter, Bryson called. I didn't answer. He texted, "Can we talk? I'm going through a lot. I didn't know how much you actually did until now." I let it sit. Didn't reply. Then he emailed. A full paragraph. Said he wanted to apologize properly, that he was rethinking everything. He asked if I'd meet him. Just for coffee. I didn't delete the message. Instead, I printed it out. A week later, I was invited to a career panel for small business owners at a local high school. They were doing a community day, talks from people who'd pivoted careers, started new paths, built something from the ground up. I'd been working again part-time at the floral shop, helping with design and orders, slowly building my way toward relaunching under my own name. One of the organizers asked if I'd bring visuals. Maybe a short slideshow. So I did. Photos of arrangements I'd designed. Workshops I'd hosted. Testimonials from clients. And then, one last slide: don't be afraid to start over. Sometimes, your second act is what you were meant for all along. Underneath that quote, I'd put an image of the email from Bryson. His name redacted. Just the words, "I didn't know how much you actually did." The room was quiet for a beat. Then came the applause. Some people laughed. A few nodded like they knew exactly who that message was from. I didn't say it, but the point was clear: some men only realize your worth when you're no longer cleaning up after their messes. After the event, I got offers. A florist in Fremont wanted to collaborate. A wedding planner in Queen and reached out. Suddenly, doors opened that had been shut for years. I wasn't Bryson's wife anymore. I was just Michigan, and people liked her. The next time I saw him was at Theo's art showcase. He walked in alone, carrying a small wrapped gift and looking like he hadn't slept. He spotted me across the room, gave a small smile, and walked over. "I saw your name on the flyer," he said. "Didn't realize you were speaking at events now." I nodded. People like a good comeback story. He looked around. "Kids doing okay?" "They're thriving," I said, honestly. He hesitated. "You look different." "I feel different." Then, after a long pause, he said, "I regret what I did." "All of it." I shrugged. "That's between you and your conscience, Bryson." He nodded like he understood. And for once, he didn't push. Later that night, Mira asked if she could stay home next weekend instead of going to his place. "He's just exhausting," she said. "It's like he's always trying to prove something." I told her she didn't need to explain. I got it. And that was that. So no, there was no screaming showdown. No car set on fire. No public shaming. But there was something better. A woman who found her footing. A man who lost the world he built on lies. And a mistress who got exactly what she handed out, emptiness.